What's happening? What's going on, Frag-Heads? Max Forte with another video. This time around, it's my favorite notes and fragrances part 2. After many requests and popular demand, I figured let me put the part 2 together. And this is basically my favorite fragrances in perfumery, part 2, which will give you a total of 20. If you have watched part 1, I said that these videos will spin off a series of videos of my top favorite fragrances in one particular note. I may do like a top 10 tobacco scents, rose scents, so forth and so on. So stay tuned for those. In the meantime, let's just kick it with my top 10 this time around, starting off with Patchouli. So just like the previous video, I'm going to give you a fragrance that has that one particular note very prominent, and I'm going to give you the odor profile for each one of the notes. So let's start with Patchouli, which is the note of choice. And one fragrance that comes to mind right away is a groundbreaking fragrance from the house of Thierry Mugler. By now you should know what I'm talking about. The Blue Star Thierry Mugler Amen. So Patchouli is an herbaceous green bush that grows mainly in India, and it's from the same family as mint, curiously enough. Now, patchouli nuances could be sweet, earthy, dark, with a woodsy edge to it. Patchouli happens to be a very popular worldwide note in perfumery, and it's very common in woody floral musk fragrances, always at the dry down or base. The second note of choice here today is Sandalwood. Now, Sandalwood, one fragrance that comes to mind immediately is one particular fragrance that has a phenomenal note of sandalwood, and it happens to be a really, really rare sandalwood at that. And it's none other than Rich Woods from Xerjoff. Now, sandalwood profile gives you that oily, creamy, almost milky, woodsy kind of odor profile, which is really inviting and very alluring. The sandalwood utilized to make Xerjoff's Rich Wood is called Mysore Sandalwood, which happens to be one of the most expensive and rare sandalwoods there is. The third note here today is amber. Now, amber is a note that I'm going to get to it in a second. It's a little bit controversial because there's no real amber being utilized in fragrances today, but in order to get that ambery effect, you get a combination of 3 or more notes to make the amber accord, which I'll get to in a second. But for the sake of this video, amber is one of my favorite notes, so it has to be, featured in this video. And one fragrance that comes to mind immediately is one from the amazing house of Tom Ford Private Blend, 2007 release, Amber Absolute. Now, the odor profile of amber is sweet, warm, resinous, and very inviting. Oftentimes powdery and very balsamic. And to obtain the accord of amber, of the note, or the note of amber, you have to mix in labdanum, benzoin, and vanilla to achieve that ambery accord that I'm talking about. But nevertheless, amber is one of my favorite notes for sure. There are so many great fragrances in perfumery that contain the note of rose, but one in particular did it in a way that it's so natural that it's almost like you're squeezing a whole bunch of rose petals and smelling it, because it's so naturally made. And this particular fragrance is none other than Cazimi from the house of Matriarch. What an amazing composition. If you love rose, this one is a must for you. You gotta check that one out. It's really rose paradise. Now, no matter what rose you're talking about, Taif rose, Egyptian rose, Bulgarian rose, whatever the case may be, rose happens to be the king or the queen of flowers. Now, rose has a odor profile that's very inviting, with nuances that could be a little bit woodsy, a little bit fruity, a little bit powdery, but nevertheless, it's very inviting and very alluring at that. And most often, when you think about rose, it's mostly associated with feminine scents. But nevertheless, a very nice and very well composed rose fragrance or perfume. It's always very deeply romantic. Next note up, we have Cardamom. Now, a fine example of this note can be found in one of the most talked about fragrances in the fragrance community to date. It's none other than Yves Saint Laurent's La Nuit Le Long. Now, cardamom happens to be one of the most ancient and old spices in fragrance, and it's also one of the most expensive notes in fragrance. Now, cardamom tends to be intensely sweet, very aromatic, resinous, and slightly spicy. Here's a curious fact for you, not only used in fragrance, in the Middle East it's also used in many dishes and also to aromatize your home. Next up, we have frankincense, or silver frankincense in this case. I absolutely love incense, but frankincense, which is often confused with incense fragrances because it gives you like the odor profile, it's very incense-like. But I'm talking about, again, frankincense or olibanum, in a perfect composition that has the note of frankincense in it, and it gives you this regal aroma, is none other than the King from the house of Amouage. And Amouage is one company that uses frankincense perfectly. And of course, I'm talking about Jubilation 25. The highest grade of this particular note is found in Oman, in the Middle East, and it's also called, silver frankincense that I talked about, which is utilized by the house of, Amouage, located in Oman. And the smell is, again, very resinous, very opulent, almost incense-like, and it's very deep. It's one that person you don't like really resinous and dark scents, steer away from it. But if you want something with a little edge to it, olibanum will definitely give you that in your fragrance. Okay, so we talked about olibanum. Now we're going to go into the other end of the spectrum. We're going to talk about Neroli, which is very bright and very inviting, easy to please. So Neroli is the next note of choice. Neroli, or orange blossom, is a phenomenal note in fragrance, one of my favorites, and one fragrance that's perfectly giving you that Neroli note is none other than Bond No. 9's Eau de New York. I absolutely love this fragrance in spring and summer, and it's one of my favorite Nerolis, or orange blossom, found in a fragrance. Now, Neroli or orange blossom is very citrusy-like, could be very sharp as well, depending on which note you combine it with or how it's blended, with slightly bitter nuances and hints of honey and orange-like aroma. Could be a little floral facets as well, but nevertheless, it's very aromatic and very inviting. And number 8, the note of choice now is musk. A gorgeous fragrance that represents the note of musk perfectly is none other than Serge Lutens' Musk's Koblai Khan. So musk in the ancient times or early times was mainly obtained from the perennial glands of deer. So most musks that we smell in today's fragrances are actually replicated in a laboratory. These are synthetic musks, which will give you that different range from, something that is a little bit deep, a little bit dark, to something that's really animalic and really hard to smell. Lots of musks today that we smell in fragrances are utilized at the base, mostly to help with the fixation, making it stronger and to last longer. At number 9, the next note of choice now is agarwood or oud. Now, the note of oud has really grown on me over the past 4 or 5 years, and it has taken the Western world civilization of perfumery by storm, as it was really popular in Eastern world. But over the past 4 or 5 years, most designer houses in some way, shape, or form have released a fragrance with oud in it, or an oud flanker of something. But one fragrance that really comes to mind that had the note of oud, perhaps a little bit ahead of its time here in the Western world, but to me it's one of the best fragrances from this particular house, and the masterpiece of that is none other than this one right here, Yves Saint Laurent's M7. Again, the note of oud, or oud itself, has an aroma that's very nutty, very dark, deep, mysterious. Again, it's one of the most expensive ingredients in fragrance, so I would safely say that most designer companies and a lot of niche companies nowadays are actually utilizing synthetics to accomplish the oud effect or the oud scent in fragrances for cost purposes. And again, you have a gamut of different ouds in fragrance. You have a very animalic oud kind of fragrances that's almost medicinal and very harsh. And you have, ouds that are very wearable and very pleasant, such as, Royal Oud from the House of Creed, for instance. Last but not least, the 10th note in this video is Cyprus. Now, Cyprus is one of my all-time favorite, notes in fragrance, and the reason why is because one of my all-time favorite fragrances happens to be Tom Ford Private Blend Italian Cyprus, which is, to me, it's an epitome of professional, well-put-together scent. Now, Cyprus is a ingredient that's found mostly, it's in the family of the moss and the woods, and it's very green, a little bit resinous, but nevertheless, it's very alluring and very enticing kind of scent that is very easy to please. And on me, when I'm wearing Italian Cypress, for example, the note of cypress has a very soothing and calming effect, and again, giving out that alluring and sophisticated kind of nuance, which I love. So then there were 20. So this is the end of part 2 of my favorite notes and fragrances. Along with the part 1, you have a 20 of total fragrance notes that I absolutely love. Again, stay tuned for the upcoming videos that will, subsequently follow these notes into a top 10 of one particular note that I will choose to give you guys a video on. And thank you so much for everyone that commented in part 1. Please do again in part 2. Let me know if I have missed any notes that you love that I should talk about, or if you'd like to see a video on. Please comment down below. Stay tuned for a lot more content coming your way. This is your host, Max Forte. Until next time, keep on spraying.